Hello all, welcome back to Pragma Education once again. This is Bharat Bhushan Rallapalli, UPSC Mentor for Indian Economy, and this is a video module course that we are continuing on Indian economy, and we are dwelling into the second chapter of Indian economy in the conceptual part, that is inflation and its targeting. So we will be looking into what inflation is, how it is defined, and what is the concept behind the same, as to when the inflation will kick in, what are the factors and what are the factors comprised of, the concepts. Next, the types of inflation we will be looking at, then the consequences of inflation. Next, Phillips curve, measurement of inflation, that is CPI, WPI, how the inflation is measured. Next, we will be getting into the targeting of inflation. Why it is essential to target the inflation, we will get to know in the consequences of inflation. And when you understand the concept of inflation, you will understand that it needs to be targeted. So we will be looking into the targeting part also in the same chapter as inflation, which comprises of monetary policy and the role of RBI and everything. Monetary policy is not again studied separately, and we will be exhaustively studying monetary policy, framework agreement, committee and all other aspects related to the same in the targeting chapter of inflation itself. So let us enter into the world of inflation through the definition. So what is the definition of inflation? It is the increase in the general price level of all or most of the goods and services in an economy. So it is a macroeconomic concept which says that increase in the general price level. We will be looking into what general price level is very shortly, of all or most of the goods and services in an economy. So the three important indicators in this definition are the increase. So there should be a increase in the what price level of the goods and what both goods and services, not just goods, not just services, not just few goods, not just few sectors. It is the all or most of the goods and services in an economy. This is general price level is the second key point. So we have three key points here. One is there is an increase in what? In the general price level of goods and services. This is the definition of inflation. There is one more definition of inflation that we will arrive, or a phrase while we read the concept in the subsequent topic. So let us get into the concept of inflation. So what is the concept behind inflation? We know the definition that there is a increase. So why? Of what? GPL. So what is GPL? Then all goods and services. So we need to know why this increase occurs and what general price level means. That itself comprises the concept of inflation. General price level. It is general price level. So what is a general price level? It means it is talking about some price, and it is some general price level. So what is that general price level? We'll just have a look. So what happens is, when an economy, it is a macroeconomic concept, so try to interrelate it in a extrapolated manner. I will explain with examples also. When an economy is working at its full potential, so this is a precondition to defining the general price level. So what should happen? The economy should be working at its full potential. That whatever employment that economy will be able to create, that must be created, and it must be working at its full potential. It means it must be producing to the full of its potential. The supply, whatever resources we are exploiting in an economy, how we are processing it, how we are manufacturing or creating, how much potentially or with full potential the economy is working, when it is happening, and the aggregate supply and aggregate demand. We look into what these are very shortly. Aggregate supply means nothing but the total supply. Supply means from the industry side, where the goods are manufactured, produced, processed, value is added, or services are produced. So this is the supply side. As to the total supply is how much. How many amount of goods are ready to be supplied? How much amount of services are ready to be provided in an economy? This is the total supply. That is nothing but aggregate supply. Next is aggregate demand. It is nothing but the total demand. Means how many people are ready to buy these goods. How many of these, how many people among how many goods they are ready to buy. How many services people are ready to buy on this side. This is market side. This is producer side. Supply side, demand side. So the total supply and the total demand will be matching. We actually cannot say it is equal, because as I already told you, this is a macroeconomic concept, and this aggregate supply and aggregate demand are very dynamic, that they are actually now changing as we are talking here. So what we will do is, we will just take a snapshot of this dynamic process and we study the phenomena. So because it's a microeconomic concept, we cannot say it is equal, but it matches. Means how much ever of amount of supply of goods and services is ready on this side is ready to be bought on that side. This state of economy is called equilibrium state. Remember this equilibrium state, because this forms the basis for the further concept. So what is equilibrium state now? Equilibrium state is when an economy is working at its full potential and the aggregate supply is matching the aggregate demand. Such a situation is called equilibrium state. Okay, remember till here the equilibrium state. So in this equilibrium state, when this aggregate supply and aggregate demand are matching, there will be the level of price level of goods and services here in this equilibrium state. That price level of goods and services is called general price level. Hope I am clear. We are looking into the concept of inflation. Within that, we are trying to find what general price level is. So what is general price level? It is a price level of goods and services that is existing in equilibrium state. So what is equilibrium state? It is the state of an economy when it is working at its full potential. This is very important. I really cannot stress how much important. When the economy is working at its full potential, the aggregate supply and the aggregate demand, when they both match, that state of economy is called equilibrium state, and the prices of the goods, or price level of goods and services in that equilibrium state is called general price level. This is the general price level that we have seen in the definition of inflation just a while ago. This general price level. So what happens in an inflation? This general price level is increasing. So those prices are going up. So why it will go up? Because of what? We will just have a look. So the two key factors here are aggregate supply and aggregate demand. So let us have a brief account into what constitutes total aggregate supply and what are the factors affecting aggregate supply, and the factors are what is aggregate demand comprises of. Let's have a brief look. This is supply side, this is demand side. We call it aggregate supply and this is aggregate demand. So what are the factors affecting the aggregate supply means? You just try to think. So this is supply side where goods and services are produced, means people establish companies or industries or factories to produce the goods and services. So what are the inputs that an individual would need for him to establish a company and run it? Those are called factors of production. They are called factors of production. So what are the factors of production? There are 4 in number: land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship. Means enterprising nature. To convert an idea into enterprising nature means to take it into public, to create value among the public so that large number of people when they use it. So that's an enterprising idea. So that's what entrepreneurship does. So what are these? These are factors of production. Means these factors of production are the inputs for any factory or corporate company or anything on the supply side. Even if they produce services, they establish a company. So what do you need? You need land, capital, that is finance. You need to create an atmosphere, you need to get raw materials, you need to have machinery that converts these raw materials into final goods. You need a supply chain. At least on the supply side, you need the supply chain to be complete. So you need money for that. Next is entrepreneurship, that is enterprising nature. These are the factors of production, 4 factors of production. These are constant anywhere in the world. This is a concept. So these are the factors that affect the aggregate supply. Is it or not? Let us see with a hypothetical example. Say I am establishing a company. Say I am investing some 1,000 rupees into the company and I am producing some 100 units of some product. Say it is a pen or a pencil. So what I will do, I am in giving 1,000 rupees inside and I am getting 100 units and I will sell these units. If I sell at 10 rupees, then it is break even for me. If I sell more than with a margin or anything, that is my margin and everything. This is, we are concerned only with the production side. So we are not concerned with the prices of the pen. So what will happen is, when I am putting these 1,000 rupees, this is in the form of land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship. So where am I putting it? Those are called costs of production. So there is a cost associated with each of the factor of production. Means there is a cost associated with it. If you want that factor of production, you need to spend some money. In which forms? So the first factor of production, land. What is the cost of the production for land? It is nothing but rent. So even if you buy a land, so it is called as rent only. If you need to establish your company physically at one place, so that is the land we are talking about. You need to pay rent for it or you need to buy it. So this is the cost of production for the particular factor of production. For the second factor of production, that is labor. What is the cost of production? Wage or salary. If I need labor in my factors of production, that is in my company, I need to pay them salaries. And if I need land, I need to pay rent. Third is what? Capital, that is money. So if I need money, if I take money from somebody, what is the cost that is associated with money? That is interest. So that is the cost of production. If I get a loan from the bank to open my company, say 50 lakhs, that is a capital. So what will I be paying for it? The interest. That is the cost of production. Next, last one is entrepreneurship. So what is the cost of entrepreneurship? If somebody has an enterprising idea, they will implement it. So what is the cost of that production? It is profit or loss. So that is the cost of production that is associated with entrepreneurship factors of production. The cost of production associated with the entrepreneurship factor of production is profit or loss. That is, an entrepreneur will see whether his idea getting into work and generating revenues, that is profit, or he can see his idea fail and incur losses. That is the cost of production associated with entrepreneurship. So the costs of production that are associated with the factors of production are the main factors that affect the aggregate supply. Aggregate supply. How? I will tell with a little example. Say suppose I am investing 1000 rupees in the form of cost of production into my company, and I am producing 100 units of say some product, say pen or pencil. Now if tomorrow the cost of production increase, whether the rent may have increased or wages increased or the interest increased, then what happens is the 1000 rupees will now be produce only 80 units of the same product, say pen. Because the costs of production are increasing, the aggregate supply is falling down. So if the cost of production decrease, the aggregate supply will increase, or there should be additional capital. Only if you put additional capital, that is, if you increase the capital, then production will increase. Keeping the capital constant, if you want the production to increase or decrease, it is depending on the costs of production, that is rent, wage and interest. So these are the factors on which the aggregate supply depends. Next is what? The aggregate demand. It is the total demand. So what will be the total demand? If you calculate all the goods and services that the people are buying in our economy, that is, they are spending the money out of their pockets and buying, be it government, be it private, be it an individual, group, society or anything, all the goods and services that are bought, that is, which have demand. So we will calculate the collective expenditure. So all the people have spent that amount to buy the goods and services. So we will calculate the expenditure spent by all people. There is a code for it, that is CIGN. This is consumption expenditure. Second one is investment expenditure. Third one is government expenditure. Fourth one is net exports. What is the meaning of net exports? It is exports minus imports. That is net exports. There are four factors in aggregate demand that directly affect the aggregate demand. They are consumption expenditure. What is consumption expenditure? It is the spending by the public. It is spending by the private individuals. That is, from morning to the night, we actually buy so many goods. We actually buy so many services. The money that you spend to buy these goods and services is the consumption expenditure. From including a needle to the rockets that are bought, so it is consumption expenditure. So if that is spent by private individuals, not government. If government spends on the same, it is government expenditure. But government expenditure will also include the social security measures, the welfare, the transfer payments, pension funds, whatever welfare measures the government takes, the money that it is giving to the people is also government expenditure. Apart from what government buys for to maintain its offices. So all those products and goods and services will be here in government expenditure. And what is investment expenditure? Investment expenditure is we get investments from abroad and we see people investing money, that is here in the supply side. So that expenditure will get converted into consumption expenditure. So it is seen on the demand side, because if there is investment here in my company, like as we have seen in this example, I am putting additional capital. What does additional capital mean? It means additional raw materials, that is goods, then additional machinery, that is more capital goods, then other services they can produce more and they will try to market it, the other services that are associated with it. So with additional capital comes more goods and services. So that is that investment expenditure. So that is also added in the aggregate demand. In aggregate demand, that is investment expenditure. So if a company invests in India today, they say we are investing 100 million US dollars. It means they will have an office. That means they'll take a land on rent. Then they'll construct a big office. So the cement, steel, the other construction material, then interiors, furniture. So this is that investment expenditure. Means it is actually something that gets converted into consumption expenditure only, but it is separately calculated as to know how much of investment is spent, how much of investment has not yet come. So this is the second factor in aggregate demand. Third one is government expenditure, the salaries, running of offices, welfare schemes, everything that is spent by the government expenditure. Net exports, that is exports means the goods that we are selling to other countries. Imports means the goods that we are buying from other countries. Net exports means exports minus imports. That means if you are producing more goods and services and selling it to other countries than what you are collectively collecting from all goods and services from other countries, that is imports, that is net exports. It is seen as demand, because if net exports is positive, it means more money is spent. It means the demand is rising. These are the factors that affect the aggregate demand. So the concept here is that the aggregate supply and the aggregate demand are very dynamic. As we are talking now, people are buying things over there. That is aggregate demand. As we are speaking here, there are factories producing goods and services. That is aggregate supply. So we take a snapshot of the dynamic aspect to study it as an economic phenomena or a concept. So what is the concept between these two, or the dynamism between these two that gives rise to inflation is, say hypothetically, for example, the total economy hypothetically, say it produces 100 pence. It produces 100 pence. Means supply side there are 100 pence that are being produced in an economy in the whole year, that is in a specified time. Then on this side there are 100 people ready to buy these pens. So one pen can be sold to these people, and the price here will be fixed. The price here will be fixed at some like say 5 rupees. How will it be fixed? It will be based on the cost of production. If I invested say 400 rupees, I put a margin of 100 as entrepreneurship, and 500 rupees if I invest 400 plus 100 margin, I produce 100 units. If I sell each for 5 rupees, I'll get 500 rupees. That is 100 rupees for my entrepreneurship. That is profit. So this price will fix here as 5 rupees, because there are 100 pens that are being produced on supply side and 100 people are ready to buy pens. Now exactly in this situation, this is equilibrium state, and this price is general price level, 5 rupees in this example. Okay, clear here till here? Next, what happens due to any factors that we have seen in aggregate demand, whether consumption expenditure is rising, investment expenditure is rising, government expenditure is rising, or net exports are rising, it will lead to the whole aggregate demand increasing. Say suppose hypothetically we will say that it has increased to 125. Means there were some factors that affected people's demand in the consumption side. Maybe government has started spending more, it started giving bonuses and everything, people want more. Now more people are ready to buy the pens, means there may be more exams or more people want to write exams. So 125 people are now ready to buy the pens, but in the supply side nothing has changed, it has still remained 100 only. The supply is still 100, but on the demand side we see some factors giving rise to expenditure and extra spending, which gave more demand, that is more number of people are now ready to buy less number of goods. Here it is equal number of goods, that is the equilibrium state. Here more number of people are ready to buy less number of the goods. So what will happen? Obviously the price will be greater than 5 rupees. Because there are more people, means too much money chasing too few goods. This is the phrase that I have told that can actually define inflation. That is, when too much money chases too few goods, it is inflation. So what is happening here? There are more number of people ready to buy, means there is more money here that is chasing less number of goods. There is an increase in general price level. It is nothing but inflation. So because demand is increasing, we call it demand pull inflation. Because demand is rising and the supply is constant, we call it demand pull inflation. Because of the increase in the demand, the prices of the goods and services are increasing. Clear till here? Let us get to the next one. That is, something happened on the supply side. The cost of production had enormously increased. They have suddenly increased. They are called supply side shocks or supply side bottlenecks. There may be increase in the land prices or rent prices. There may be increase in the salaries, or the interest rates in the banks are increased. So it will increase the cost of production. So what will happen? The supply falls down to 75 now. So for the same amount that I am investing here, the capital is constant. Because the costs of production are increasing, my supply falls down to 75. But here, say suppose the demand is same, at least it has not increased, it is still same. Means 100 people are still ready to buy the pens, but number of pens in the market are only 75. Now tell me, is this phrase suitable to this scenario also? Too much money chasing too few goods. Yes, there are more number of people ready to buy, less number of goods. So in this scenario also, what will happen? The price will go more than 5 rupees. That is general price level. This is general price level. Because of the supply side shocks, the prices kept increasing. So what do you call this? This is also inflation because the prices are increasing, but this is from supply side. It is called cost push. Cost push inflation, demand pull inflation. These are the concepts that emerge from behind this hypothetical example, and this is the concept behind the inflation. The basic inflation, how it kicks in, why it kicks in, how it manifests into whatever it is, whatever dangerous or however dangerous it will turn into. So when too much money starts chasing too few goods, that money will start losing the value. That is what happens. Means here the cost of production are 500 rupees, means 5 rupees. Along with the profit, it is sold for 5 rupees. So if this pen is bought at 10 rupees, what is the meaning of that? The value of the pen is inflated by 100%. Means the cost of production are totally happening at that rate only, but because of the supply side and demand side shocks, the price touches 10 rupees. But is the pen actually worth 10 rupees? No. This is where the money starts losing value, when too much money starts chasing too few goods. It is inflation. This is the concept behind inflation, and this is a phrase that you can keep in mind to check whether the situation is inflation or not. So here, see, too much money chasing too few goods. Yes, what do you call it? It's demand pull inflation. Here, yes, here also too much money is chasing too few goods. What do you call it? Cost push inflation. So these are the two types of inflation that we already covered in the concept itself now. So I hope we are clear with this example. because of the dynamism, the dynamic volatility between these aggregate supply and aggregate demand, the concept of inflation kicks in. This is where things start losing value. Here, if more number of people are ready, or there are less number of goods. Let us look into a real life example into the same situation of inflation. It was the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020. So it was an event that affected humanity universally. But let us have a look at what it had done to this concept of inflation especially. Say on that day when the lockdown was announced in the country, which were the goods that were in the highest demand? Masks, sanitizers, and other related things to COVID-19 or preventing COVID-19 spread. So there was enormous increase in the demand for these. All people wanted masks now. All people wanted sanitizers today. So say suppose in that situation, the supply was around, like this example, if we take it was 75, the demand was around 7,500 or 75,000. Means 75 masks are ready to be bought by 75,000 people on that day. Example I am saying, because of the increase in demand. So if the government doesn't take necessary steps and increase this supply, what would happen? Each mask would have costed in thousands of rupees. But is a mask really worth 1,000 rupees while it was manufactured? No. This is how inflation will corrode the value of the money. This is how money starts losing value, because the prices are inflated like balloon. So this is an example. Government took measures and everything, and this also reached 75, and that is why the price of the mask still remained 5 rupees, 3 rupees, 10 rupees and 12 rupees. Understood? If the supply would have not increased, the masks would have costed in thousands. But original mask would have not taken 1,000 rupees to have been manufactured. So that is where the money starts losing value, when there is inflation. This is the concept behind inflation. These are the terms associated with it, and this is a real life example concerned with inflation. So we have seen into the definition of inflation and the concept of inflation. Let us dwell into the types of inflation. We had already seen two types. What are those? Demand pull, cost push. This we have seen in the concept itself now. Next, third type of deflation. Inflation, that is deflation. Fourth is disinflation. Next is reflation. Next is structural inflation. Then skewflation. Next, stagflation. And hyperinflation. These are the types of inflation that we will be looking into. We have already covered demand pull and cost push in this concept itself. So we will get into the third type. Which one is that? That is deflation. Deflation is very simple. Don't get confused between deflation, disinflation. I'll tell you. Deflation is nothing but the opposite of inflation. It means a decrease in the general price level of same all or most of the goods and services in an economy. Here it is decrease in the same GPL of all or most of the goods and services in an economy. That is opposite of inflation. So what is the opposite? Means the general price levels start falling down. So there is a notion or a general phenomena. So when we see the prices falling down, then we should see the demand going up. For example, if an iPhone was costing 60,000 rupees, I'd be thinking twice about it. If it had come down to 40, 50, 30, so I should be ready to buy 2 iPhones. But it doesn't happen in deflation. What happens in deflation is, I will expect my money to have more purchasing power in the future than now. Means I will witness the price of iPhone falling from 60 to 30,000. So what I will essentially do is, I will keep my money with myself and I'll keep waiting for that price to fall down to 10,000. This is what happens in deflation. That is why there is a constant fall. People will start to save more. They will not come to spend it in the economy. They will think that our money will have more purchasing power in the future than now, because they would have witnessed a first-hand decrease in the general price level of all or most of the goods and services, not just one goods, not just one services, not just one particular sector of goods, but all or most of the goods and services, including real estate, construction sector. Every sector of the economy will be affected, and it will witness a decrease in the price levels. So here what happens? The aggregate demand is falling down. People are not ready to spend. Spendings are drying. So what happens when the spendings are drying? Too many goods are being chased by too few money. Is it true or not? Here the aggregate demand is falling down drastically. In the same example as we have taken earlier, if it is 100 under equilibrium state, the aggregate demand is only now 10. But the production is still 100. So what is happening? Too many goods are being chased by too few money. So this too few money will cause the deflation. The spending will fall down drastically, or say suppose the supply would have gone drastically up. It is not practically possible. Mostly it is because of demand side fluctuations. The supply side shocks generally give inflation only. The demand side shocks give deflation. People will stop spending. They think our money has more purchasing power in the future than now. So even if the iPhone price falls from 60 to 30, I will not buy 2 iPhones, but I will wait for that price to fall down to 10,000 so that I can buy 6 iPhones. This is what happens in the real time in economy. So this is the opposite of inflation. Here I would just like to add one conceptual thing, because deflation is also completed. So as we have seen in the example, the aggregate supply and aggregate demand are here. Hypothetical example 100 we have seen. So what happened when the demand has risen to 125? When the supply is still 100, there is inflation. So if you want to stabilize the prices again, you want the equilibrium state to be achieved again, there are two possibilities. You take the demand to 100 back again, or you get the supply to 125. How? Through additional capital. But you keep in mind why this demand is coming. If this is coming because of the free money in the hands of the free people, then if you start doing this, again this will revert back to the same stage back once again, based on the size of the economy. So in this example, what happens is essentially, because the demand is 125, the aggregate supply, by creating additional jobs, by pushing additional capital, the supply is now increased to 125. So again they both match and the price is again stabilized. You put 5 or 6 or whatever, but the price is stable. But in this whole process, what happens or what needs to be observed is that the total supply or the production before was 100. Remember, these both are again in, when we say this is equilibrium state, it is full potential. Means the full potential of economy itself has grown. The full production or size of the economy has grown. So what happened is expansion of economy. Only remember, it is when the inflation is in very lesser terms or in the manageable terms. If it gallops, if it keeps running, or if the supply side giving huge shocks, so it will become uncontrollable, and then you cannot say the concept of expansion of economy and all. For only few short term and lesser numbers, the inflation actually facilitates the expansion of economy, because the demand has risen. We will see into what created the demand. If because of the net exports the demand has risen, yes, it is value created. If it is because of government expenditure on salaries that has increased, then no value is created. Accordingly, to this demand, this supply will be matched. So inflation will be brought to control based on this. Again, it will be stabilized. But in the process, what happened? The size of the economy had increased. The whole size of the economy has increased now. Before, the total size of the economy was 100. Now it is 125. What happened? The GDP increased. That is, the growth increased. The economy is expanding when the inflation is in little amounts and in a feasible, manageable forms. So this means inflation will pedal expansion of economy. Means because there is inflation, to match and stabilize the prices again, we'll increase the supply. So people will get more jobs, more capital is pushed, more goods are produced. So the economy size will increase. So what will happen in the deflation then? The same concept we will study for deflation. What will happen then? Say suppose in deflation the demand had fallen down. From initially it was 100, the demand has come to 25. Because the demand is coming down, the supply means capital is pulled off, means people will lose more jobs. Now the supply also comes down to 25. Now also it is stabilized. The price will again be stabilized. Price stabilization will come. But what happened to the economy in the process? It shrinks. It will start to shrink because there are no more people to buy more goods and services. The demand has fallen. So to match that, the supply also will come down. If this is the full potential, it means many people would have lost jobs. Lot of capital must have been pulled out, not pushed in. So this will lead to what? Shrinking of economy. So deflation, if it keeps continuing, so what will it lead to? Recession. Recession is a short term to mid term phenomena only, not long term. It will witness a fall in the growth or fall in the level of the growth rate itself. Like last year our economy has increased 10%, but this year it is increasing by 5%, next 2%, next 0. Means the growth had started falling down. Recession. If this recession prolongs, if it keeps continuing for more than few months and into years, it will turn into a depression. So what will happen in recession itself? People will lose more jobs. In depression, there will not be even food production. There will be famines. There will be very drastic situation where if governments doesn't intervene, the economies may collapse into itself. So that depression itself was nothing but that affected the global world, that is in 1928, the Great Depression. So that was the time when economists had realized that there is a second side to the economy, that there are limitations, that there needs to be a balance between two ideologies, that is capitalist economies and socialist economies. The depression was witnessed mainly in US. The capitalist economies had thought that they will keep increasing, there is no limitation to it. But the depression had hit them hard. So what happened? The governments have come in to support people. They have paid people wages. Even though they don't work, they create value, productivity or nothing, government will keep giving money to the people so that they'll keep spending it and it doesn't lead to recession or depression. So when the government kicks in and it start doing all these welfare measures, what is it called? It is socialist economy. So the world has come to realize that a mixture of both, the mixed economies, is the best form after this Great Depression in 1928. And pure socialist economies also do not work, because based on that ideologies, all the resources and all the production, everything is in the hands of the government. It will be redistributed among the public equally. So such kind of economies will not have no incentive to grow. There is no demand, there will be equal demand. There will be equal supply based on the population and everything. Nobody wants more. There is no incentive. If I work more, I will get more. No. I keep working hard. There is a guy who doesn't work, but both of them are given same salary by the socialist economy. So I will lose the incentive to work. Such kind of economies cannot grow constantly. So that is the other extreme. This is one extreme, capitalist. So depression. What happened? The prices shot up. It was all bubble. The prices were artificially increasing without actually creating real value to them. So it burst. When it bursts, the scene will reverse. So deflation, recession, depression. So this is the little concept of expansion and shrinking, and inflation in little amounts and it will help in expansion of economy, and deflation will lead to prolonged deflation, will lead to recession and depression. The most classic example of deflation is none other than Japanese economy. That too in the modern times. Not in the very past. It was only recent part. That is just 2-3 decades ago. Japan was thrown into a deflationary spiral. Means the demand started falling down. People thought their money will have more purchasing power in the future and they did not spend it. So it spiraled down. Next, supply came down. Next, demand came down. Supply came down. Demand came down. Supply came down. So what happened was, over 10 years, the average growth of economy was only 1.2%. For 10-year period we are talking. Means for 1 year it would have only grown 1.12% on an average. So that was a kind of deflation or the phenomena that went into Japan, and Japan had almost lost 2 decades in fighting this deflation. So what happened? Real estate prices fall down, assets prices fall down, everything started losing value. And people are not ready to spend. Government, yes, it will keep spending more and more and more only to sustain. Even this 1.2% and everything is possible because the government was pushing money. Private expenditure and all, everything was almost dried up. The government started spending huge. It started giving loans at almost 0% interest rates. Very less interest rates. Even then, it took a lot of time for Japan to actually get back on the track. If Japan would have not handled it properly, they may have fallen into one more depression, which would have been very catastrophic for at least few industries like electronics, automobiles and other industries. But Japan still managed to keep kicking in, and only with this kind of growth rate and everything, it started to again start coming out of such situations. But only its economy is strong like Japan, they are very robust in their industrial production and latest electronics, superconductors, all these latest technologies. Because of such kind of things, Japan was able to swim out of deflationary spiral. So there are many countries which may fall trap to that, and they will go into recession, depression, and the whole economy will collapse. So there is no limit to it as to how low it can go. And even inflation, how far or how much high it can go, there is no limitation. So that is nothing but hyperinflation. Because the concept has come now, let us look into the hyperinflation now itself. What will happen in hyperinflation is that the inflation will keep rising at a very fast rate. A fast rate means even in hours, in days, it will cross some hundreds of percentage. And the highest inflation that the world had ever witnessed till now is 3.75 lakh percentage. I have told you there is no upper limit to the inflation. But the world had come to witness this much percentage of inflation. Where? It was in Zimbabwe. It was also not too long ago. This is in the recent past 3-4 years itself. So what happened in Zimbabwe was, the government, what it did was, government started printing new currency notes. Why it will be forced to do, we will see in public finance chapter. When there is a lot of fiscal deficit, there is a lot of deficit. So in order to fill that deficit, there are various ways. So one of the worst ways is to start printing new notes. Because what will happen is, these notes will just inflate the prices, but it will not create the value. That is what happens, and this is why it is one of the worst ways to handle deficit or public finance. So Zimbabwe spiraled down into such a hyperinflationary measure, and what happened in the original time was 200 million Zimbabwean dollar note was printed by Zimbabwe in the end. Before the economy, that currency was deemed unfit to be in the world economies, and that currency was flushed out and new currency was brought in now, that is based on US dollar and other currencies. They are giving support to Zimbabwe. If it would have not stopped, there is no end to this. One single currency note, 200 million Zimbabwean dollars. You know why? Even with this 200 million Zimbabwean dollars, you would only get half a kg of potatoes. And 200 million Zimbabwe dollars, before printing new currency notes, they used to carry in gunny bags. By the time they fill the gunny bags and go to the market, the prices would have doubled by then. Means every hour, every day. So it had reached some 3.5 lakh percentage. So ultimately, Zimbabwe started printing 200 million Zimbabwean dollars. Imagine 200 million Zimbabwean dollars, but you would only get half a kg of potatoes with that. So that is what inflation is. Means half a kg of potatoes would never be worth that million in any currency for that matter. Means that currency had lost its value. Means there is no value creation in paying this much amount. It is only inflated like a balloon, and it hyperinflated, and there is no limit to it. It will keep going on. So the government or the economy will collapse. What happened in Zimbabwean case was, they stopped or held the Zimbabwean economy. They removed it from this globalized economy. They flushed out their currency. They are now giving aid in the form of different currencies. And over a period of time, one of the such currencies will become their fiat money. Fiat money is the one that is approved as a legal tender by a government in an economy. So Zimbabwean dollar would have been a fiat money, because in their country they will be transacting in those currency only. But still it lost its value. Its value was evaporated because of hyperinflation. And as I am telling you, there is no limit to it. We have seen 3.75 lakh percentage increase in inflation in Zimbabwe. So if it is left like that, you would have gone to 7.5 lakh, 75 lakh percentage also, the economy would have collapsed. But there is no limit to inflation or that concept or phenomena and the numbers associated with it. So try to understand that concept, and that is why it becomes very difficult. Even if it crosses few percentage, 10-20%. So that is why it became essential to target the inflation. So we had completed around 4: deflation, hyperinflation. Next we will look into the disinflation and reflation. They are same concepts but in opposite directions. Like deflation and inflation. When inflation and deflation denote the direction of the prices, whether the prices are going up or the prices are going down. Disinflation or reflation gives the sense of rate of inflation. It is a change in rate of inflation, that is whether the inflation rate is increasing or decreasing. We are not talking about the prices of the goods here. We are talking about whether the rate of inflation is increasing or decreasing. So what happens essentially is disinflation concept. Say suppose this is 0, this is below. So there is inflation, it was around 20%, then it keeps coming down, means it will keep decreasing 15, 12, 4, 0, then it comes to -2, it will keep going down also. So till the time it crosses the 0 below horizon, it is called disinflation. It means it is in the decrease in the rate of inflation. It is not a decrease in the prices, it is a decrease in the rate of inflation. When it crosses 0, it becomes deflation, means it is shrinking. It means prices are falling down. But here, in between here, it is called disinflation. And if this price is rising, it is called reflation. So don't get confused between these two. While inflation and deflation denote the prices, direction of the prices of the goods and services, disinflation and reflation indicate the change in or the direction, the change in rate of inflation, whether it is increasing or decreasing. So once below 0, it is inflation deflation only, but above and below this, when the rate of inflation increases, it is reflation. When the rate of inflation decreases, it is disinflation. Hope I am clear. These are other two. Next, which one? Let us keep a tick as to what are all completed. This is over, this is over, this is over, this is over. Next is structural inflation. Structural inflation. So in economy, whenever you come across this term structural, it means it is pertaining to the structure of that economy. So it could be relating to the industry sector, it could be relating to infrastructure, it could be some background on which that economy was built or on which the economy has grown. So that is what we mean when we talk about structural. In this type of inflation, we are concerned about the inflation that is kicking in because of such structural defects. So there will be structural defects in any economy for that matter. No economy is perfect. There will be few structural defects in the economy. It may be there will be more development in one area, very unequal development. Next, exploitation of resources may not be efficient. There will be increased costs because of lack of proper infrastructure. Then how that economy manages its finances, how they get their revenues, how they spend their money. So it depends on various such factors. So when there are such drawbacks in the structure of the economy, they are called structural defects. So because of such structural defects, if the prices of the goods and services increase, that is called structural inflation. I would give an example. Actually, I have 2-3 examples. I'll try to cover all of them for you to understand what structural inflation is. First example, I would like to take logistics sector or transport sector. So all various types of goods, raw materials and other intermediary goods are moved here and there all over the country every day. So it is a very huge sector. So I would like to emphasize here on the roads or say infrastructure. If this infrastructure is not robust or the roads are not proper, the connectivity is not good, the condition of roads is bad, it will take more time and more money for the logistics or the transport. Means the lorries will use more fuel and it will take more time because the roads are bad and everything. Means you will have to pay more number of days salary to the drivers, then its maintenance cost and everything. So this will increase. Because of this will trickle down into the market. Because there is an increase in the price in the transport and this thing, when the product comes to the market, its price level is increasing. Because of the transport sector, especially in food sector, we face this. Because there is no robust cold storage mechanism, supply chain mechanisms in India, forward linkages, backward linkages, no. So when there are no such infrastructure ready in place, it will lead to the increase in the cost of the goods associated in this transport. This is one example of structural inflation. So in order to address this, you have to focus on creating infrastructure, that is capital. You need to invest in it so that the infrastructure that is created will start creating value. So what is that kind of infrastructure? Health, drinking water, toilet facilities. So you think these are not infrastructure? Only if you are healthy, you will be earning and you will be part of economy. If you are not healthy, you are not counted in the economy. So if more number of people are healthy, they will be able to work, then our economy will flourish. If there is good drinking water supplies, less number of people will fall ill, less number of children will die, means there will be more number of population, working population in the future. So that is infrastructure. That is how you create value. Of course, roads is also infrastructure. So you create proper roads, you create connectivity. Wherever you go, there needs to be petrol stations. You need to have minimum facilities available because there will be millions and millions of vehicles are associated in this transport and logistics sector. They create huge demand. If these prices are cut down, if this time is brought down, if these associated extra costs are brought down, it will stabilize the prices. Understood? So that is structural inflation. It means there is one structural defect in the economy. Because of that particular aspect, it will lead to increase in the prices of at least one sector of the goods or one section of the goods, and in specific or in general all, because this transport sector doesn't just carry food only, it carries raw materials, finished goods, intermediary goods, it carries capital machinery, spares, everything. So it needs to be checked, it needs to be plugged. If it is not plugged, this will lead to a situation like in Zimbabwe, or this may lead to situation like in Zimbabwe. So these structural defects needs to be addressed from time to time by the respective economies. So this is about structural inflation. There is one more example for structural inflation. Yes, I would like to cover it here itself. Say suppose this is related with the public finance, means how the governments manage their revenues and expenditures, their incomes and spendings. So we will go detailed into each of them in public finance, but there is one concept, that is fiscal deficit. For now, you remember it as something like when your expenditure is more than your revenues, means your spending is more than your income, there will be a deficit. So when this happens to the government, it is called fiscal deficit, and government will have to get money. It may have to borrow, or it may have to raise funds from the public, or it will keep doing, in the worst case, as I told you, print new currencies. But it is one of the worst forms of handling fiscal deficit. So what it will do is, say suppose it will borrow some funds from public or some from foreign, then it will come and spend here, okay, to fill this deficit. So in what way or in what effective manner these funds are being utilized in here will decide the effect on inflation. This is one type of structural inflation. Like if these borrowings are used to spend on capital infrastructure, as I've told you, if you start building roads, if you start creating infrastructure, supply chain linkages, this will start reaping benefits even if it is after like 5 or 10 years. This will start creating value in the economy. Means in the expenditure there are two heads, capital expenditure and revenue expenditure. So if that money goes into capital expenditure, means creating long-term assets that create value, then that it is meaningful and it will be helpful. But if government starts spending that in the revenue expenditure, means it is to pay the salaries, to maintain the offices and everything. Here, irrespective of the productivity or whether the value is created or not, the money is being pumped. Means the government will spend it on it. So what will happen? It will lead to the increase in the disposable incomes in the hands of the people. It will lead to the increase in the consumption expenditure, pushing the aggregate demand higher. So what will happen if the aggregate demand increases? Inflation kicks in. So where it started because the funds borrowed by the government to fill the fiscal deficit were not properly utilized. That is where this phenomena, this structural defect started, and it has floated into economy, and inflation ultimately came up. So government should be mindful of where they are spending that money that they are getting to borrowing, and especially to fill fiscal deficit. This is another example of structural inflation. Next one is skewflation. Skewflation is one particular sector or one particular section of goods or services will have very much increase in prices, and because of that other goods and services in the same basket. What is a basket? It is our normal basket only. So what happens in inflation generally is all the products are taken in a basket. Few are major essential products which regularly people buy, where people spend. It is on food, fuel, energy, and other aspects like medicines, health, etc. They will have 600, 700 items in such basket. The price of all such goods in this basket will be taken at one base year, and it will be equated to 100. I am telling the measurement of inflation itself indirectly. So in this basket, if say suppose this food prices shot up because of supply side linkages, because of drought phenomena, because there is shortcomings in the supply side, that because of that inflation shot up. But because of these prices, the whole basket is showing an increase. Then that is called skewflation. So when you read it in newspaper, it will come like, because of the skewflation in food and fuel, means fuel sector and food sector are experiencing increased inflation. Because of that, the whole basket is affected. That is called skewflation. Means all the products will have inflation, but few products will have very high. That's a skewed inflation. That is skewflation. Hope I am clear with skewflation. Only few sectors or few goods and services will have too much increase in the prices, that is inflation, and it will lead to that effect will be passed on to the other goods in the basket because of those goods. So that is called skewflation. Means you say skewflation is there in food sector, skewflation is there in fuel sector, means high inflation. That is skewflation. Next is stagflation. Stagflation is the most important of all the inflations, types of inflation, and it has come to disagree with many of the theories that were existing till it has come to kick in the economies of the world. Means all the economies of the world have come to believe one phenomenon, that is inflation is inversely related to unemployment or unemployment rate. Means when there is inflation, because to match the demand with the supply, additional capital is being pushed, means more jobs are created. means unemployment is decreasing. This is the dynamics between two different concepts of the economy which led to a limitation to the concept of inflation, because they have thought that if inflation keeps growing, the unemployment keeps coming down, then all the countries will prosper, all the economies will be happy. There is no limitation to this concept. So they came to believe that this is true at all times, short term, mid term, long term. But in 1970s, the then highly grown economies like Scandinavian countries and other countries, they faced a very, very strange phenomena, because when the inflation is high, unemployment should be low. But what happens in the stagflation is it should fulfill three conditions. If it is stagflation, it should have high rate of inflation and at the same time high rate of unemployment and low or negative growth rate. Growth rate will fall down. At that times, it will be difficult for the economies to swim through that inflationary gaps. So that is stagflation. What happens is the inflation is high, but the unemployment rate is also high. How is that possible? How it was possible is that when the additional capital is being built and more jobs are created, the unemployment rate has come down. But when the people that gained additional jobs through this additional capital, they also started spending in the economy. It also kept added to the aggregate demand and it also gave rise to inflation. This is where these two concepts will merge, the inflation and unemployment. What happens is, because inflation is high, you push in additional capital, create more jobs, increase the aggregate supply. But what happened, because you are creating more jobs, you are giving salaries to more number of people are ready to spend, the aggregate demand also kept rising and it's not stopping anywhere. So it is like the aggregate demand is going up, supply going up. But what happens? At one point of time, they thought that no, inflation is important to be controlled, otherwise the economy will collapse. So when steps are taken to decrease inflation, what will happen to unemployment? It will increase. So that is what happened even in the most developed economies when they were in the low growth rates. That the rate of inflation is high and the rate of unemployment is also high. And the growth is low or negative, that economies struggled or fought to counter this situation. You want to save economy, you control inflation, but people are losing jobs. Governments will be losing in the countries. Growth rate and negative growth rate, if you don't get it up. So when you try to control the inflation, where will you get the growth from? So it is a paradoxical situation. It was a paradoxical situation only because of this phenomena, that link between inflation and unemployment. For short term and in lesser numbers, they are actually inversely relational. But for long term and mid term, for any other practical purposes, it is not true. So research on the same went on for further few decades and Phillips curve emerged. So the economist who had come with the concept of Phillips curve, that Nehru we will be discussing, was awarded Nobel Prize. So this is a kind of problem. This is a problem not just for one country, one economy. This was a problem for humanity then. The economy is something that we had created. These concepts are something that we had created, but we never knew that they will be limited by themselves. They will be limited in themselves, that they will start throwing challenges at us. So that is when world woke up to stagflation. The research on the stagflation itself led to invention of Phillips curve, and the applications of Phillips curve today are enormous. So there is a limitation, yes. And what is that limitation? How it came to be discovered or invented was another story. And it led to the Nobel Prize for the persons who worked on the same concept, because they actually solved a problem for humanity. It was a problem for humanity together and they had solved it. So that is the story behind the stagflation, and it is one of the most neglected types of inflation, but it is one of the most serious forms of inflation, because now you are trying to control the inflation. Unemployment is rising, people are losing jobs, but the growth is not there. So the economies will have to get into the basics of their structures, basics of everything. Then they'll have to address those defects and everything. Only then they will be able to swim through these scenarios. Otherwise, inflation may collapse your economy, unemployment may collapse the political situation and social situation in the country, lower economic growth rate would lead to recession or depression. End of story. So stagflation is such a dangerous phenomena. It is more dangerous than inflation itself, to simply say. So that much is the importance associated with the stagflation, but it is generally neglected because it's a complex concept. But it is not so complex. It is actually a problem that humanity had faced, and there was a solution that was nothing but Phillips curve. So we'll be looking into the Phillips curve shortly. So this is stagflation. So how many types we had covered? I hope we had covered all the types by now. We had covered structural, skew, and stag. Here we are done with all types of inflation.